It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interviews.
There's going to be much higher expectations, sense of awareness of what we bring to the table.
Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Sproles, answer, yes! Caught! Touchdown, they did it!
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker here on the Full Court Press. I'm live in Logan, and Jason is live in Las Vegas. And talking about what's going on between the Utah State Aggies, San Diego State Aztecs, what's going on with the Mountain West Conference, as some crazy, really entertaining games yesterday. Could tonight be anything similar? You had 2 overtime games, 2 upset games. Well, technically 3 upset games if you want to be real technical. But regardless, it
technically
was
only one if you want to be really, really technical.
Well, I guess if you look at who was actually favored in the games, yeah.
Yeah, there's seeding, and then there's the Vegas odds, which I have to pay attention to now given where I am.
That's right.
Because San Diego State was favored, and New Mexico was favored over Boise.
Did they? So that must have changed, because earlier in the day it was Boise State by 1.5.
When I looked at it, basically just before the game, or not too far, I think it was like during the Nevada-Colorado State press conference I was looking at, and it was like, New Mexico's favored by like 1.5. And I was like, dang, that surprises me.
It's because all those people coming from Albuquerque to watch the game.
I guess that's true. They're accounting for that.
Hitting the sports book, moving the line. But it was a wildly entertaining day for college basketball in the Mountain West Conference. And so now we know officially and definitively who Utah State will be facing. They had the first game of the day. They had the luxury of playing and then getting rest and being able to observe the rest of the field and get an idea of who they would play tonight. And it's going to be San Diego State. Now, the Aztecs struggled with UNLV, a team that they struggled with just, 10 days ago and lost against. And so this was a game that I thought would be kind of close, and the UNLV was positioned in a way that they could maybe take down the Aztecs. But Boone, one of the Boone brothers, was not available. I think that played a pretty significant role. They had the freshman, Dedan Thomas, play out of his mind to keep them in it. Had a chance to send it to another overtime game. Had a clean look, but just didn't go in. And so now it's going to be Utah State and San Diego State. Now, both teams went to overtime, so it's not like one team necessarily has an advantage over the other, that one team had an easy blowout win versus one playing extra time. Utah State, on the scoreboard, it says they won by 12, but that margin of victory really wasn't determined until the final minute and a half, minute 15 of overtime. That was still a pretty close game in the extra session for the Aggies. So, Jason, when you look at these two teams in their path to get to the semifinal game tonight, did one have to expend any extra energy over another, or was it pretty equal to both teams?
Well, I don't know, because I kind of see both ways. Because for one, you had, I need to double check some minutes numbers, because Great Osobor played all but 42 seconds of that game against Fresno State. He was on the court the entire time. I think Darius Brown played all but 30 seconds because Landon Brenchley came in for him. And so your two biggest guys played the entire game, never got a rest until, I'll be honest, I disagree. I think the overtime period wasn't particularly close because the Aggies jumped out to a 5-0 lead. Fresno State didn't score until there was about 40 seconds left in the game, and the Aggies emptied their bench at the end, putting in Nigel Burris and Landon Brenchley. So the Aggies didn't have to expend nearly as much energy in the overtime period as I think San State did, because the Aztecs, they came down, they almost they gave up a wide open three-pointer. It was kind of a long three-pointer at the very end of overtime, which dang near would have sent it to a second overtime. So they were playing tough, hard for every second of overtime. So San Diego State probably expended more if we're using some kind of weird energy quotient here. Like San Diego State would have had to play harder for longer, but I think their bench, and again, I need to double check these minutes here. I don't know if because they tend to go a little deeper in their rotation. Because you look at minutes, like they had one guy that played 40 minutes. That was Lamont Butler. A lot of these other guys sat for, at least some of the game. They would have probably played all of overtime. So they're maybe slightly more rested. Again, it just kind of depends on how you think of it, because San Diego State had to play harder for longer, but their star players, didn't play as many minutes as some of Utah State's key guys who, they were dealing with a thinner rotation and foul trouble. So, Ian Martinez, he'll be pretty well rested. He didn't play a whole lot because he was sitting most of the first half.
Yeah, that's true.
But, some of these guys, more especially I think Darius Brown and Great Osborne, because those are the guys you're worried about. Those are the guys that need to step up. Darius Brown, he started 0 for 7. Is he going to have tired legs and go 0 for 7 again? Granted, he kind of came on late, so I guess being tired made him better at basketball because he was better when he'd played more minutes. So it's kind of an interesting question because there's two sides to this where you can argue one had to play more, but you can argue it the other way just depending on exactly how you look at it.
Yeah, both teams, 87 points for USU, and it was 74 for San Diego State. So definitely more offense coming out of the Aggies, but it seemed to be a more physical contest for San Diego State and UNLV than it was for Utah State and Fresno State. And there were moments where, there were Osaboras getting fouled, but it wasn't a big physical game because Fresno State has so many guards. It's not going to be that kind of a contest. But San Diego State and UNLV, that seemed to be a lot more of a physical contest with their size and physicality coming from both squads.
Yeah, those two teams are just more physical. And, with Fresno State, they're playing guards, so their thing is ball handling, quickness, speed. And that was something that gave the Aggies problems, but they're going to have to switch to a completely different type of opponent that's not necessarily going to beat you through speed and quickness. They're going to be physical. They're going to be, disciplined, and they're going to be going after the boards, chasing those offensive rebounds. Because San Diego State, they're not a very good shooting team, but when you get those offensive rebounds, it's almost like a good offensive play. Because usually when you grab an offensive board, the defense isn't set, and you can go back for an easy play, or you can get like an open three-pointer, and maybe if you're San Diego State, maybe the second time works because they're not a good three-point shooting team. But if they can get a few of those to go down, those second chance points, that's something that San Diego State can really thrive on. And heck, they have like 25 offensive rebounds?
Yeah, I was just looking at that.
UNLV?
25 offensive boards.
Yeah, like Brian Dutcher, the second thing he said in his press conference was rebounding was the key. And it's going to be the key again against Utah State unless his other prediction comes through, because he feels that, he said explicitly he thinks that the Aztecs are going to start making shots because they shot pretty bad against UNLV. And, to be honest, San Diego State's kind of been shooting poorly, down the stretch. But if the Aggies can force some of those same misses and rebound, which was the big key, I think, for them when they played San Diego State at home, is they didn't let the Aztecs dominate the boards. They rebounded enough and stayed out in front, in the key stretches. So if the Aggies can rebound the misses that San Diego State has. Don't let Jaden Ledee get in there. Don't let Jay Powell get in there. Don't let Saunders and some of these other guys get in there and grab boards, because that's how you're going to give up easy points to the Aztecs, and you do not want to be giving up easy points to a team that struggles on offense and then especially has the best defense in the conference where you're going to be struggling to score yourself.
Yeah, both teams kind of struggled from three, particularly last night. San Diego State 6 of 23 from beyond the arc. Utah State 7 of 25. Pretty similar, 28% for USU, 26% for the Aztecs. But tonight's game, both these teams now have a game under their belts. They're more familiar, comfortable with the gym. You'd think that the shots would be a little bit more efficient. but they're also playing against teams that are very good at defending the three. Utah State, one of the top teams in the country with 3-point percentage defense, and San Diego State, just period, a very solid defensive team all around. So you think you'd be a little bit more comfortable and familiar with the gym, but you're also facing a team that's a better defensive squad than the one you just faced.
Yeah, and it is also their second game in as many days, so I think you're more likely to see a game in the 50s than you are in the 70s. And if this game if either team gets to the 80s, it means somebody played a horrible game on defense, or somebody played a spectacular game on offense. So this will be a low-scoring game. I mean, you look at the game in the Spectrum, it was 68-63. San Diego State had like their best offensive game of the year, and they barely hit 80 against the Aggies. So it's going to be a low-scoring game. These teams are tired. They're playing in a neutral site. They're both really good defenses. So we'll see how things go. That, or we're just going to see a bajillion free throws, because my goodness, these referees called every dadgum bit of contact. The only game that was kind of normal in terms of fouls was Boise State, New Mexico. Like, it was like the only game that didn't have both teams in the double bonus by the end of the first half and second half. Like, holy cow, those referees were so foul happy, it was stupid. And, like, you look at the foul totals, like, we were all going nuts over Great Osobor drawing 20 fouls against UNLV. Well, Jaden Ledee went out and he drew 17 fouls
Yes, he did.
against UNLV. So it's like you had two guys drawing 37 fouls by themselves in like a 2-hour span or 2-game span. And it's like, and I don't know, like, in this game, I feel like they should just call nothing and just let these two guys play. Just don't call a single foul like the entire first half and just let everyone play and just go with it. Like that, honestly, this needs to be a game where the referees just say, look, we're letting it go. Because if they don't, then it's just going to be a horrible game if the referees don't let these guys play.
Speaking of players themselves specifically, there was a question posed to Coach Dutcher after his game concluded last night about experience in these kinds of moments. And we all know what San Diego State did last year, and a number of their guys are back. So you would look at it and think, well, San Diego State's a team that has a lot more experience in these situations than Utah State does. But he was quick to point out that there's Utah State players that shouldn't be overlooked with the experience that they have too. Here's what he had to say after the game.
Well, it's not really Utah State. It's Osobor and Brown have played in the NCAA tournament 2 years in a row. They've been to the conference championship of their league. So there's Utah State playoff experience, and there's the playoff experience their players have. And so they've got guys that have played important games in March, and I think they'll be ready for their opportunity, and so will we.
Yeah, it's Danny Sprinkle has experience getting to the NCAA tournament, playing well in his conference tournaments. And while the Mountain West experience may be little or nothing with this squad, it's not without players who have experience playing meaningful games in March.
Yeah, I mean, Darius Brown had to play well for Montana State last year. And, I mean, when Daniel Sprinkle was at Montana State, 2 straight years the NCAA tournament, he doesn't get to the tournament if he doesn't win the conference tournament. Big Sky's a one big conference, no questions asked. You don't get to the tournament out of the Big Sky if you don't win the tournament. I don't know if they've ever been a 2-bid league, fair or not. But they had to win the conference tournament. It was do or die, and, well, they did. And so, I mean, this year we keep going on and on about Utah State's record in close games, and especially in important games. This team knows how to win key important games. They've won pretty much all of them to this point, to stay in first place in the standings or, to win the conference outright. Anytime the score is close, they come away with the win pretty much. So the Aggies have enough, I think, veteran experience and leadership to get through these moments, and also a healthy bit of luck, which has really helped the Aggies along the way, getting lucky in some of these situations. It could all end tonight because luck in a previous game doesn't necessarily mean anything in the next game, but the experience the Aggies has will at least help them to some degree.
And there's, as we've talked about, there's been a lot of great battles between these two teams. Talking about experience, these two teams have a habit of finding each other in the conference tournament, and more often than not, it's either in the semifinals or the finals, where these two squads have faced each other over the last couple of years. And Jason, you had a chance to ask Coach Dutcher about that experience, or at least his memories of those experiences.
I don't remember one game other than Sam Merrill banging a three on us to win it. That's the thing I remember. That's the curse of coaching. You always remember the ones you lose. So I remember that shot and what an epic game that was, well, against our 30-2 team.
The one thing he remembers is the Sam Merrill shot. And we all remember it well, too. Thanks for the reminder, Coach.
Yeah, that's the problem. I know Aggie fans really like that, but yeah, I mean, you mentioned where it's kind of the curse where you remember the bad ones. Like, I don't know if he remembers that better than he does his own Final Four run. But, yeah, it's like that one that just kind of sticks in your craw where it's like, yeah, San Diego State should have won that game, to be perfectly honest. But Utah State played the kind of the game of their lives. Of course, both teams were tired because that was a low-scoring game. So I think that shot made it like 58-55 or something like that, to where, it just came down to that one shot, and the Aggies win that one. They qualify for the tournament. And like with that year, I keep seeing, I saw some about BYU the other day where it's like, they're still lamenting their own lack of a tournament run because I don't remember exactly. I think they had a decent year that year. Heck, I think they beat the Aggies that year, so they're obviously having a solid year. Utah State fans insist they would have gone to the Sweet 16 or something like that. And San Diego State, they were a 30-win team, so of course they thought they were going to go far and very well could have. They imagined that year going similar to last year. So everyone thought they were going to the Sweet 16 that year, but who knows? It's a shame that it had to end on that shot, but there are worse ways to end a season, I guess.
Yeah, yes, that's true. If it's going to end, at least have it end like that. So 2 times these two teams have faced each other this season. They split. When it was in San Diego, the Aztecs kind of had their way with Utah State, especially in that second half. When they've faced each other in Logan, it was a close contest, but in the end, Utah State winning 68-63. So in both games previously, Osobor and Ledee kind of canceled each other out. I mean, they were pretty similar in how they played, or at least their impact on the game. It was everything else happening around them that seemed to be the big difference makers. For Utah State, for their win, it was Brown who had the fantastic game with 25 points. Foslev had a big game. Had big contributions from Martinez, not in scoring, but in other ways, with 6 rebounds and assists and a steal. This game tonight has to be similar to that one in Logan, where it's a lot of other guys stepping up, and it can't just be Osobor like last night, and where he's the main focus that leads the team to victory against a team like Fresno State. It's going to require other guys stepping up and having big games.
Yeah, I think you're going to want to see Javon Jackson again, especially as a 3-point shooter. Because when you look at Great Osborne, the game that the Aggies won, the key stat for him, because he actually scored 17 points in both games. 17 points and about 7 or 9 rebounds, I think, in both games.
7 rebounds exactly in both games.
Okay. Yeah, so 17-7, but the key difference is 7 assists in the game at home, and he had like 1 or 2 in the other game. Or was it 3, I think?
He only had 1 assist in San Diego.
So, that's the key for him is, he was going hard in both games, was efficient, because I think he shot 8 of 12 around 8 for 12 in, both games. I think it was fairly similar. May have been 7 of 10 or something like that in the first game. I didn't shoot too many free throws in either game. But the key was, he was able to pass it out to somebody or dump it off to somebody, find a guy open, and then that person would hit a shot. They weren't doing that in San Diego. They did it more often in Logan, and that's what they're going to need. So that's like when you kick out to Javon Jackson, you need him to be hitting those shots. And he's been pretty reliable in games where he's played a lot of minutes from 3. He's probably one of the best 3-point shooters on the team, just percentage-wise. So when you kick out to him, he's got to hit some open shots. When Isaac Johnson's on the floor, because he's going to have to stay on the floor and play well, be effective defensively, and then have him be kind of that 4-out option, that stretch 5 center. where he can hit a couple of three-pointers. Have Darius Brown, I don't think he needs to go for 25, but have him go for 15, 16. Don't start the game 0 for 7. You need Ian Martinez to hit a couple of shots. Like, you've definitely hit on the head where, like, it's everybody else needs to have a good game, because that's what's decided it for both teams in the games where it was split. Because, like, Jaden Ledee, he had, like, I think 23. Well, I think he had 23 in the second game, but he had, like, 19 in the first game or something like that. But it was everyone else. It was Jay Powell. It was Elijah Saunders. It was, all these other guys. They all had good games. And that's how San Diego State ended up having one of their better offensive games, because, like, they're not a great shooting team, but on that night they had a good shooting night. And so the Aggies, it's going to be a team effort to beat a team like San Diego State.
Yeah, one of the other things that's kind of stood out to me is that Utah State did they outscored San Diego State in the paint in both games. They outscored the Aztecs 32-22 in San Diego, and then outscored them 36-26 in Logan. So they outscored them by 10 points in both games. But what was the big difference is that San Diego State was really hitting from three in San Diego. They hit 9 3-pointers in that game, and that proved to be a big difference and was a struggle for USU, especially when it came from somebody that you wouldn't have expected to play very well, and that was Powell, who had a big impact on the game in San Diego.
Yeah, and I know I've gone over this, but there were, I think, 3 different guys that were shooting like 27%, and they shot like 50% in that game. And the Aztecs, in some ways, are pretty similar to the Aggies on offense in that obviously they have the big guy, Jaden Ledee for the Aztecs, Great Osibor for the Aggies, who are remarkably similar in how they approach the game and their physicality and drawing fouls and being unstoppable in the post and getting double-teamed constantly. But the Aztecs are at their best when it's not just Jaden Ledee. Like, sure, if Jaden Ledee goes for 30, that's going to be a decent offensive game, just like, when Osibor goes for 30. But their best games are when their supporting guys are getting 10, 12, 16, 17, a couple other guys doing that, which is what happened in San Diego. Darian Trammell gets 12. Jay Powell gets 16. Micah Parrish gets 14. Elijah Saunders has 8. Like, that's the Aztecs at their best, especially when they're hitting threes. And that's, again, another real big similarity to the Aggies is especially from 3. If they hit from there, you don't beat the Aggies. Or, excuse me, you don't beat the Aztecs. Well, both ways. Like I said, if the Aggies are hitting their threes, you've just lost. If the Aztecs are hitting their threes, you've also just lost. And so I don't know if either team's going to hit their threes today. We could see the worst 3-point shooting game in Mountain West tournament history. Or one of these teams could end up hitting threes, and that team would probably end up winning the game if there's a big difference between these two teams and how many threes they hit.
Yeah, San Diego State hits 9 threes in their first meeting and only 3 in their second. Utah State pretty consistent in that Utah State hit 6 in San Diego, and then they hit 7 in Logan. So they were pretty consistent, but it was the wide variance there for San Diego that proved to be a big difference maker in their game to get that first one and get it by a pretty wide margin, a double-digit loss for Utah State. So yeah, and this the question remains. Mason Falslev has had a pretty big impact and helped the Utah State Aggies beat San Diego in Logan, but is he going to be available to play tonight? That seems to be the main question. And are the Aggies going to hold him out throughout all of this tournament, or is there a chance that he might play in some of these games?
Sorry, I got distracted. We were talking about Falslev?
Yes. And I don't. Danny Sprinkle seemed to indicate that. Is he leaving it up? I think there's a little bit of confusion. Is he leaving it up to Mason whether he decides to play or not, or is it we're going to hold him out and we're just going to evaluate him day to day?
Yeah, it seemed that his comments were like when he was asked like when he found out that, or like when they decided that Mason wasn't going to play. It seemed to be Mason's decision, but I imagine it's never down to like a single person. It's probably Mason leaning toward there's too much pain, because I think at this point a lot of it's pain tolerance. We don't know any details about the injury, but it seems to be his shoulder that's causing him a lot of pain, and it's to the point where he just can't play. So if he feels good today, I mean, they probably know roughly by now whether or not Mason's going to play. We probably won't find out anything officially until we get to the arena. But yeah, it could be a pain tolerance thing, but if there's something structurally wrong, then, that's probably a season-ending deal for him. So, like, Danny Sprinkle basically said he'd be a game-time decision, but Danny also said that he didn't think he was going to play. So he was pretty frank about that, where he just doesn't think Mason Falslave is going to play, which probably doesn't bode well for Mason's prospects the rest of this tournament, and could put him at risk of not playing in the NCAA tournament. Just, again, depending on how bad this is.
Right. A lot more to discuss and preview for the matchups between Utah State and San Diego State. Also preview the later game with New Mexico and Colorado State. Utah Jazz are in action as well this weekend, so we'll preview their games going on, which will be heard here on The Fan. Stick around. It's coming up next on the Full Court Press.
According to Malcolm Gladwell, it takes over 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything. This is Jay with Daryl's Appliance. You don't need to spend any of your valuable time figuring out appliances when you partner with us. We are Cache Valley's local appliance experts. Daryl, my dad, started this business in 1970. Founded with his passion of connecting with people, we train our amazing team to carry on his passion for people and appliances. It's part of the Daryl's difference. Call for your appliance repair today. Daryl's Appliance, west on Airport Road.
A diamond is forever and is perfect to represent your love. For those special occasions, give her a natural, one-of-a-kind diamond as unique as she is. Our exclusive brand, Neat and Brilliant Diamonds, is both beautiful and affordable with quarter-carat diamonds starting at $499. We have hundreds of sparkling diamonds at our integrity price guarantee with financing available. An investment for generations to come, Monday through Saturday, 10 to 7, where Utah gets engaged. S.E. Needham Jewelers, middle of the block at the sign of the clock.
Spring will get here, and when it does, those old rusted-out vehicles need to be moved. Call DD Auto and Salvage and let them pay you for that junk vehicle. DD Auto and Salvage makes it easy and fast to get rid of your junker vehicles, paying you the most money possible. Pickup is available. DD Auto and Salvage in Logan wants to pay you today. Call 787-1204.
That's 787-1204 today.
See store for details.
Beezer Lock & Key specializes in securing your world with their expertise in locks, keys, and hardware. Every aspect of their services is meticulously tailored to ensure your safety. They offer a vast selection of hardware brands and access control options, along with custom master key systems. With Beezer Lock & Key, you have control of your facility's access 24/7. For 28 years, Beezer has provided top-notch security solutions that stand unmatched in the industry. Visit 4th North, 1st West in Logan, or go to beezerlock.com to discover more.
Hey golfers, are you ready for the golf season? Birch Creek's punch passes are on sale at the spring sale price, currently at a $40 discount, and are on sale through March 31st. Visit birchcreekgolf.com and purchase your punch pass online. Birch Creek's punch passes never expire and are valid 7 days a week. So if you love golf, call Birch Creek today or visit birchcreekgolf.com and purchase your punch pass at the spring sale price. That's Birch Creek Golf Course in Smithfield.
Attention Artisan Eyewear fans. Crystal Vision is gearing up for their annual trip in search of 2024's latest eyeglass frames. To prep, their shelves will be undergoing a major transformation to make way for the new and upcoming styles. Crystal Vision is offering 50% off select current styles of handcrafted eyeglasses. Don't miss your chance to be fit by their expert opticians with one-of-a-kind artisan eyewear at a fraction of the price. Craftsmanship, detail, and savings. It's all waiting for you at Crystal Vision on 14th North or crystalvision.com.
At Cache Valley Bank, it's their people that make the difference.
Hello, I'm Ivan Cherry, Commercial Loan Officer at Cache Valley Bank. My family and I love this valley and enjoy connecting with its people and communities. I appreciate the opportunities I've had to work closely with local businesses to tailor solutions to meet their financial goals. Come visit me at our Hiram branch or give me a call and let me show you what opening an account with Cache Valley Bank can do for you. We look forward to meeting you. Cache Valley Bank, member FDIC.
Girls, insist he take you to Jarek's. Picking out your wedding ring is an experience you will never forget. Come to a place where the mood is right and the setting is perfect for romance. Jarek's Fine Jewelry in Logan. The perfect collection of memorable designs, classic creation, and modern marvels. If you want an intimate, romantic experience you will never forget, then insist he takes you to Jarek's Fine Jewelry. Make it special, make it Jarek's at 930 North Main in Logan.
Jarek's Fine Jewelry. Make it special, make it Jarek's.
Do you have a backup generator, or have you explored the options of adding one to your home? Generac backup generators will keep your home or business safe and cool during the summer months if the power goes out. Do you already have a system? Golden Spike Electric can service it for you. If you don't have one, Golden Spike Electric can find the right model for your needs. Find them online at gsegenerators.com or call 435-257-3016. Golden Spike Electric and Generac, power you can count on.
Curious about Bell Sculpt and what sets it apart from other cosmetic treatments? At Bell Medical, we specialize in minimally invasive body sculpting, which means no general anesthesia, so you're awake and comfortable throughout. You can even watch fat being removed. Unlike those who freeze fat cells, we permanently remove them, providing instant results in just one visit. With Bell Sculpt, you're guaranteed 2 to 5 inches of fat loss, all in a safe and effective way. Schedule your free consultation at our Bountiful Clinic at bellmedical.com. That's BELLE medical.com.
Breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interviews. It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker. Jason is hanging out in Las Vegas, getting ready to watch and observe and write about what happens tonight. Utah State, San Diego State. Pre-game coverage will start not too long after we get off the air here on our sister station, starting at 6:30, a full 1-hour pregame with Al Lewis and Jalen Moore, previewing Utah State and San Diego State in the semifinals of the Mountain West Conference Championship tournament. Now, the tip-off will be at 7:30 tonight, and full play-by-play over on KVNU. And then when that game is over, it'll switch to Colorado State and New Mexico. That game expected to start around 8 o'clock. It was a late night last night in the Mountain West. We had 2 overtime games that delayed everything, pushed everything back, but definitely got your money's worth, or you were not left not being entertained with all those games yesterday in the Mountain West Conference tournament. Interesting to see if it is the same level of excitement tonight. But going to this game between Utah State and San Diego State, Jason, the Aztecs opened this morning as 3.5-point favorites. Now they're sitting at 4.5-point favorites as we're getting close to game time.
Yeah, well, San Diego State, they were the favorites to win the tournament going into the tournament. And so it makes sense that they'd be favored against the Aggies in this one, and 4.5 is maybe a bit strong, but I think the Aztecs are certainly capable. Like, if they play a good game, they should beat the Aggies, but obviously the inverse is true.
Yes, this is very true. So we kind of
hard hitting analysis.
Yes, that's amazing.
If one team plays a good game, they will win. But I think the obviously the indication is they're more confident that San Diego State matches up well with the Aggies than the other way around.
I know I was asking about fan bases there in the arena. New Mexico had a really strong fan base in attendance, and it sounded like Utah State had a good representation. San Diego State, could you tell what kind of representation they had? I know it was like people wearing red versus people wearing red and black with San Diego State and UNLV last night. But could you tell, did the Aztecs seem to have a good crowd in their favor?
It was okay. It was probably slightly exaggerated because I think I was sitting next to San Diego State's band, and they are they're loud. All the bands are pretty loud, and they're cheering pretty loud. But it felt like they had a decent enough contingent of fans. It's going to be fairly unique because the Aggies are pretty much the only team that brings like a student section. The rest of them is just their fans, and they try to do some cheers and they do some fun things. But It's not like the herd, the spectrum on wheels. So I think Utah State may very well outnumber, maybe slightly, the San Diego State fans. It'll depend. But I don't know if it'll be a deciding factor. I think it'll just be the Aggies might be able to muster a little more energy from their crowd than the Aztecs, but it'll probably only be by a little bit, if any.
Yeah, interesting.
It'll just be a lot more fun crowd on the Aggie side because the show doesn't travel. They stay in Vegas. They're in Viejas.
That's true. That is very true. Because Utah State has shown that they play off of their crowd. They play well in front of their students and in front of their fans. So if there's a strong Aggie contingent there, that's going to help this Utah State team. A great Asabor, Jaden Ledee, they're likely to still play very well and impactful in the low post. For Utah State, like we said last segment, it's hard for me at least to say, well, this player is going to be the X factor for Utah State because pretty much every other player has to step up and play well for USU. If anything, if I could point to maybe one or two guys that it would, if they have big games and it's things are going well for USU, and that'd be Josh Aduje and Ian Martinez, two guys who've been relatively quiet. The tail end of the regular season and the start of this conference tournament, where if they could have more meaningful contributions offensively, then that could mean really big things for Utah State tonight.
Well, like we were saying last segment, like if you get great games out of your supplemental players, your supplemental scorers, I should say, then that's going to make the difference for either team, unless, Ledee goes for 30 and Asabor only 15 or vice versa. This game will be decided by the Micah Parishes and the Ian Martinez and the Darius Browns and the Lamont Butlers rather than the heavyweight matchup that the broadcasters are going to fawn over. You can play a drinking game with how many times they say All-American or Player of the Year, and you'll probably be by the first media timeout. But it's going to be decided by those guys. So if it's Josh Aduje, we can't say for certain which guy is going to step up for which team. Like it could be a Lamont Butler or a Micah Parrish or a Josh Aduje or a Javon Jackson again. Like you can't guess who's going to step up, but you can kind of narrow it down to about two or three players for either team. And if those two or three all have a good game, well, that team is probably going to end up winning. So it's going to come down to those kind of guys. So you really hope that Aduje has a good game, especially because he's probably going to be starting again. Javon Jackson in reserve. But to be honest, I think Carson Templin and Isaac Johnson and Khalif Fasako, they'll have as important an impact as anybody else because they're going to play more. It's a bigger, more physical team. And Sako had a massive game in Logan against the Aztecs where he was defending Ledee, especially down the stretch. So there's going to be a lot of important roles played by guys who their impact positively or negatively may or may not show up on the stat sheet, but will end up determining the game in a big, very noticeable way.
And if I'm not mistaken, Ramadan is still going on, so he's fasting during the day and not eating until sunset, where this game's a little bit later. I don't know if he'll be able to get food in his system before the game or not. So he could be a little bit more taxed tonight than he was yesterday. So that'll definitely be something to keep an eye on for USU.
Sunsets at 6:49 local time. Game starts at 6:30.
Cutting it close.
Yeah.
The other game to watch and keep an eye on is the other game in the semifinals tonight. It's Colorado State and New Mexico. And the Lobos are 2.5-point favorites in this matchup. Both teams 10-8 in conference play. Both teams 24-9 overall in the regular season. Two teams that have had very similar paths to this point. Which team makes it out and ends up in the championship game?
So I'm leaning towards New Mexico, mainly because I feel like the bigs for New Mexico, they're going to be able to be grabbing a lot of rebounds, and I think they can have that impact where Colorado State doesn't really have a response to that as much. And I'm trying to look at the matchups they had during the regular season. I think Colorado State, they Well, yeah, they split, so I don't know. They only lost by 2 at New Mexico. Yeah, like I said, I'm leaning toward New Mexico. I think for those reasons. But if you get one of those Isaiah Stevens games, or they hit a bunch of threes like they did it against New Mexico, Colorado State ends up rolling. But I think New Mexico is rolling as well. 2 straight really good games, and going up against a Colorado State team that I think they match up decently well against. So I'm leaning towards New Mexico in this one.
This is a coin flip for me. I like how Colorado State dispatched Nevada just with contributions from a lot of different guys and the way that they did it. It's not one particularly dynamic, powerful player, but New Mexico is a team that's playing with desperation, and that's motivating them and fueling them. I think that New Mexico can be a pretty emotional team, probably more emotional team than Colorado State, which can work in their favor at times, but can also work against them. And so I actually am leaning a little bit more towards Colorado State in that sense, where I seem to buy into the leadership of Colorado State on the floor a little bit more than New Mexico. And so I'm going to go with Colorado State in this one, playing their way into the championship game. But who faces them? Is it going to be Utah State or San Diego State?
So for me, I'm just leaning towards San Diego State in this one. I think the Aggies, certainly can beat them, but it was a narrow game in the Spectrum. It was a bit of a wider game, a wider margin in San Diego, and I think that the Aztecs will have an advantage. They'll be able to kind of beat the Aggies up a little bit physically inside. They won't be beating up Osibor, but who's that guy next to him, like Isaac Johnson or Khalifa Sacco or Carson Templin. I feel like they'll have an advantage there. They'll probably end up grabbing some extra boards, which will probably help what I think will be a lackluster shooting night for the Aztecs. Most likely, they'll be able to grab some of their misses, get some extra points. The Aggies will continue to struggle to score. They've scored 67 and 68 against the Aztecs. I don't think I don't know if they'll get to 60 in this one. Just because they're going to be tired. It's a great defensive team, and the Aztecs I don't think they're going to have a particularly great offensive game, but I think they're going to edge out the Aggies somewhere around low 60s for them, something like 63-59, 65-61, somewhere around there is where I think this game probably ends, likely in favor of the Aztecs.
Interesting. I picked Utah State going into this, but I'm very nervous about this one, and I think it's primarily because of Mason Falslow's availability. I think if Mason was available, I'd have a little bit higher confidence level in picking Utah State to advance and get past San Diego State. I think the Aztecs played a more physical game yesterday than USU did. I think their bodies will be a little bit more taxed than the Aggies will be tonight. But I think their physical style of play can be disruptive to Utah State, and not have somebody on your roster who can also dish out a level of physicality is going to be problematic. I think if Utah State is able to hit from the outside and connect from three, they're going to give themselves a shot in this one, and I would like their chances. And I think they are capable of doing that. But in the end, I think San Diego State is unfortunately the team that I'm going to be picking to advance and play in the championship.
I like how we both picked the Aggies to win the championship in our bracket, and we're both picking them to lose here.
Well, neither of us knew about Mason Falslow's availability at the time either.
I don't think that really changes my life. If Mason was playing, I'd probably feel the same. Just because he doesn't really move the needle that much. He helps. But to be honest, I think Javon Jackson will do perfectly well in his role. It's a different kind of help. Mason slashes to the rim. Javon is a shooter. But to be honest, I think the Aggies need shooting more than they need slashing in this game. They need to be breaking up the paint, give Osibor some more room to run, and more guys that he can kick it out to if the Aztecs do throw a double team. So I don't know. I've already explained why I think San Diego State's going to win, but it'll still be a pretty close one, I think.
Yeah. So both of us have San Diego State in the championship. We are mixed on New Mexico or Colorado State. Can either one of those teams beat whomever comes out of the game, the earlier game today.
Yeah. For anyone thinking about my predictions, I did go 1-3 in my second round predictions, and I think 2-1. So what am I sitting at? 3-4 in my bracket predictions so far. Yeah, I'm not doing so hot.
I should have grabbed mine. And, I'm not. I guess I could think about it. How I did.
I'm just going off memory of who I'm pretty sure I picked. So it's entirely possible I'm misremembering, but it was a small enough bracket that I'm pretty sure I'm able to remember all my picks.
Yeah. So anyway, pregame coverage on our sister station KVNU starting at 6:30. Al Lewis and Jalen Moore. Different ways to listen to that one. 102.1 FM, 610 AM. Streaming on the 106.9 The Fan, not 106.9 The Fan, the KVNU mobile app and kvnutalk.com. So you can listen and follow along with that game later on tonight. And full play-by-play coverage will be there. And afterwards, you'll hear comments from the coach and players and an opportunity for you to weigh in on what happened for Utah State and what's next for the Aggies. Shifting gears, shifting away from college basketball. Utah Jazz are in action tonight, taking on the Atlanta Hawks. It's Quin Snyder coming back to Salt Lake City. And this is also, the Jazz will also face the Minnesota Timberwolves tomorrow. And what's odd is that Utah, it's been very, very rare for the Utah Jazz to face an opposing coach. Not since like the early 80s have the Utah Jazz faced an opposing head coach. Isn't that crazy? And I think it was Tom
Like a
Nasalki.
former coach?
Yeah, former coach. Head coach who used to coach the Jazz, coached somewhere else, and then came back and coached against the Jazz.
Didn't they face like Ty Corbin? He was like an interim coach or something like that for the Kings.
That's a good question.
I feel like that happened. Maybe they didn't play him. I think Corbin was an interim for a hot minute for the Kings. Maybe the Jazz didn't play him. I just remember that happening. Yeah, their coaches seem to either retire or not get a head coaching job again,
or stay there for a super long
one.
time. In the case of Jerry Sloan.
Yeah, well, I say he just retired, and Frank Layden
that's
retired,
true.
and Ty Corbin didn't. Like I said, the only head coaching job he got after the Jazz was a temporary interim one with the Kings. And Quinn's like the first head coach to actually go get a different job after coaching with the Jazz, which says a lot about Utah's philosophy with head coaches. Heck, they were willing to keep Quin Snyder on. Quinn quit.
Yeah, it's true. They wanted to keep him,
which is kind of a mistake in my opinion. But
yeah. Well, I think once it became clear what the Jazz front office wanted to do with the roster, Quinn was like, "Yeah, no, I'm not going to be around for that."
Yeah, Quinn's not a rebuild coach, and I don't think he's. Yeah, he wouldn't have been fit for it anyway.
No, he already gone through that when he first arrived and started as a head coach in Utah. But the fact of the matter is, the Jazz are taking on the Hawks tonight. We'll have that here on the Fan, and both teams are really low in the standings in the NBA, and the Hawks are actually favored in this game tonight. Hawks are currently in the 10th position in the Eastern Conference. We know Utah is out of that. They've slipped even below the Houston Rockets. But this isn't so much about trying to get playoff positioning or playing for seeding, as much as Utah's in this phase now of developing their young core, their core for the future. And there could be an interesting battle at some key positions here, though, tonight with Keontae George and Trae Young, Collins going up against his former team. So it could be an interesting matchup tonight for the Utah Jazz for reasons outside of trying to get to the playoffs.
Well, it's just going to be a lot of injuries, though. Looking at the injury reports as of about half an hour ago, the Hawks are actually going to be without Trae Young. He's out.
Ah, okay.
And the Hawks are missing like 3 or 4 rotation players. The Jazz are obviously missing Lauri Markkanen. Chris Dunn is out with rest. It's not even pretending now. It's just rest. Jordan Clarkson is still out.
That old rest
And
ailments,
then-
that can knock you down.
Yeah. Taylor Hendricks is questionable. Did he play last time out? I can't remember.
No, he has not played since he hurt his foot or his toe.
Okay, so he's available, but he's questionable. Their two most recent signings, Darius Baisley and Kenneth Lofton, are both on G League assignments, so you won't be seeing either of them. So a lot of injuries between these two teams. So I don't know, Eric. It might just be about Quin Snyder returning. Because there's not a whole lot else to look for. Obviously, you look for Keontae George, Bryce Sensabaugh. Those are two things that, again, keep an eye on. We're always, always want to watch Walker Kessler. I always enjoy watching him play. So maybe continue development between Kessler and George, because you always want to see how a center and a guard can develop together, especially as pick and roll partners, essentially. So want to continue to see that. We've seen some really good games out of Keontae George lately. He's been playing very well, scoring points, being efficient, getting some assists. The Jazz are still losing, so I do worry about it kind of being empty calories, where it's like, hey, if you're not impacting winning, it's like, okay, congrats, you scored a lot of points. That doesn't mean anything unless you're winning, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you get empty calorie rookie numbers, and then they become stars because then they get good players around them. So that's just something to keep an eye on for the future. But for now, we can enjoy Keontae playing well statistically and just being fun to watch as he's coming into his own late in his rookie season.
His game tonight's going to be on NBA TV, so it's a later start than normal. It's a 7:30 tip-off. So that pregame coverage will start a little bit later here on The Fan. And then speaking of familiar faces, old faces coming back to Utah, Timberwolves will be here, and so a number of former Jazz players on that roster: Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and to name a few. So that and then that game also will be a 7:30 start on Saturday night. So back to back for the Jazz, facing some familiar faces. Could be some emotional games for their roster for different reasons. Collins against his old team, Snyder on the other side tonight, and then obviously all the other former players for Minnesota tomorrow. So some interesting Jazz games on the schedule for tonight and tomorrow on the roster, or on the schedule, on the docket for the Jazz. And let's do this to close.
Continues.
Yeah, that's right. And then let's close off the show here tonight, Jason. You're in Vegas. I mean, the home of picking spreads and whatnot. So let's close out the show with our own pick six. We didn't get to do it yesterday because of the game and reacting as it just had gone final. But let's try to predict what will happen this weekend with our pick six. You're on a bit of a heater here. You're on a win streak, and so I'll let you get to decide if you want to start or defer.
I'm going to go first.
Okay.
So I have a lot of games about tonight. With the Mountain West, and I also have the tiebreaker. That's about the Jazz. But let's start with this one. Offensive rebounds by San Diego State tonight against the Aggies. Over, under 12.5.
I'm going to take the over.
All right. I'm going to take the under.
All right.
Just to be contrarian. Fouls drawn combined between Jaden Ledee and Great Osborne. How many fouls do they draw as a duo? I set the over-under at 18.5. Mind you, they both just about broke this by themselves.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to take the over.
I'm going to take the under.
Okay.
And then more points tonight, Donovan Dent or Isaiah Stevens.
Ooh. I'm going to go with Stevens.
All right, I'm going to go with Dent. All right, your turn.
Okay, tomorrow night in Delta Center, Rudy Gobert combined points, rebounds, and blocks, setting the line at 20.5.
Over.
I'm going to take the under. Points and assists for Keontae George tonight against the Hawks. 28.5.
Wait, it's points and assists?
Yes, for Keontae George tonight against the Hawks.
I'm going to go under.
Okay, I'm going to take the over. And then on Saturday, it's the Golden State Warriors and the LA Lakers, 6:30 on ABC. Steph Curry, 3-point attempts, setting the line at 13.5.
Now, last time I did this, I got burned super hard. I'm going to go under again, though, just because.
Okay, I'm going to take the over. And our
last time I did
tiebreaker?
this, he took like 30. Jazz plus 3.5 against the Hawks. Do the Jazz cover it, or do the Hawks cover that 3.5 point spread?
I'm going to take the Hawks.
All righty.
So that's,
there we go. That's pick 6.
That's our pick 6, and we'll reconvene on Monday, see how well we did. We'll recap the weekend. We'll be discussing who won the Mountain West Conference Championship. Is it Utah State? Is it going to be San Diego State? And don't forget, the NCAA Selection Show will be here on The Fan Sunday starting at 4 o'clock. So tune in to hear where the Aggies are headed, who they will face in the NCAA tournament, and other teams from around the Mountain West Conference, where they'll go, who they'll face. We'll have it here on The Fan starting Sunday at 4. Until then, have a great night. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you back here on Monday.